I don't know what I'm doing posting this to a damn internet forum, but I need to get it out somehow. Maybe writing it all down and posting it online will help. I doubt it, but it's worth a shot. Here goes nothing. My name's Daniel Mathis. I used to be a detective, but I retired 2 months back. Well, maybe retired isn't the right word. Forced to quit is more like it. Either way, I'm not on the force anymore. That's enough about me, though. If I'm going to tell this story properly, then I need to start at the beginning. The very beginning. It started 20 years ago. A child went missing. A little boy, only 10 years old. His name was Johnny. I'd worked on a few missing person cases before, but this one was different. Johnny was walking back from school with some of his friends. It was getting dark, so he decided to take a shortcut through the woods. His friends were too scared to follow, so Johnny went alone. Needless to say, he never made it home. His parents reported him missing a few hours later. We searched the area for days. We questioned every sex offender in a 15-mile radius. Hell, we combed through every inch of that damn forest, but we never found him. Whoever took Johnny was smart about how they did it. They knew how to cover their tracks. It was almost like the kid vanished into thin air. Flash forward a month to mid-January, and I'm knocking on his parents' front door. It was snowing that day. I remember Paul, the kid's father, answered the door. He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept in weeks. Despite this, he still made an effort to be polite. He gave me a wary smile and shook my hand. "Detective Mathis, come in. My wife's in the living room." His wife, Erin, was sitting with her back to me, staring at the TV. On the screen was a recording of Johnny, taken a couple months before he had disappeared. It was grainy and blurry, the way home videos are. He had bright orange hair, freckles, and green eyes, just like his mother. In the video, he was dressed in a puffy jacket and playing around in a pile of leaves. It must have been taken from their front yard. Mommy, watch this!" he yelled, getting a running start before leaping headfirst into the pile of leaves, stray foliage clinging to his hair. "Wow, sweetie," Erin's voice said from behind the camera. Johnny flashed a beaming smile, showing off the gap between his front teeth before preparing to jump into the leaves once again. I stood in the doorway to the living room, watching the video unfold. Once it reached its end, Erin started it from the beginning. It was only a few seconds long. She gazed into the TV, rubbing her necklace with her thumb, silently whispering along. "Dear," Paul said, shaking her from her trance, "Detective Mathis is here." Erin looked over and paused the video. "Please, take a seat," Paul said, gesturing to a chair. Both he and Erin sat on the couch across from me, his hands holding hers as I started to speak. "Mr. and Mrs. McLean, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that it is not good news. We have to call off the search for Johnny." Erin broke down immediately, sobbing into her hands. Paul squeezed his eyes shut, trying to stop himself from doing the same. To be honest, I felt like crying as well. I fought to keep it going for as long as I possibly could, but, well, Johnny's been missing for a month now, and we've run out of leads. We're going to keep the case open, but until any new evidence comes to light, well, there's nothing we can do. The living room was filled with the sounds of Erin's wails. Paul tried his best to comfort her, but he was barely keeping it together himself. "You promised," Erin started to shout. "You promised you would bring him home." "Mrs. McLean, I am trying." "Why can't you bring him home?" She rose to her feet and stormed upstairs, leaving Paul and I alone in the living room. "I'm sorry, I really am," I muttered, unable to look him in the eye. Paul wiped the tears away from his face before rising to his feet. "I think you should leave." I looked up at him, opening my mouth to say something, but no words came out. I simply nodded my head and rose to my feet. Paul was barely fighting back his tears as I left. As soon as I shut the door behind me, I could hear him break down and start to sob. Paul and Erin both died 15 years later. Paul started drinking and never stopped. Erin drove her car off a bridge in the middle of the night and drowned. I don't think they ever forgave me. Not really. To them, I was always the detective that failed to bring their child home. It was the 20th anniversary of the kid's disappearance, December 5th, when I came home to a letter. It had no return address or any distinguishing features. It was just a plain white envelope. There was no way it could have been delivered by a mailman. Someone dropped it off personally. I still have it somewhere, but I don't need to read it again to remember what it said. The words are braided into my brain like a hot iron. I sat at my dining room table, cut the envelope open, and started to read. Dear Detective Mathis, if things were different, I would have written this letter to Johnny's parents. I regret that I never got the opportunity to explain this to them. I know they never would have been able to understand, but I would have liked to explain it regardless. Enough about that though. With them gone, I have decided that the only one worthy of my confession is you. I watched you search for me, you know? I watched your interviews on the news. I watched as every lead you had went cold. In fact, I've seen you in person. You wouldn't have noticed me. I would have been just another face in the grocery store or on the street, but I noticed you. I always noted you, Detective Mathis. I am sure you have figured it out by now, but I am the one who took Johnny. I am the one who snatched him away in the woods 20 years ago. I still remember how I lured him to my car. I remember how I knocked him unconscious. I remember how much I was shaking. I want you to know that I never touched him. Not like that, anyways. I want that to be known. On the back of this letter are coordinates. Follow them, and more will be revealed. And if you tell the police about this, you will be throwing away your only chance to do right by Johnny. No more mysteries. No more games. It's time you learn why I did what I did. I sat there, reading and rereading that letter for what felt like hours. There were two possibilities. Either the person who took Johnny 20 years ago really had sent me a letter confessing his guilt, or someone was messing with me. And I really did not know which one was worse. I flipped the letter over and looked at the coordinates, careful not to touch the paper too much. If this really was written by the person who took Johnny, I want to preserve the prints. Staring at the coordinates, my first instinct was to call the station, but then another thought came into my mind. I knew that if I showed up with the other cops and the guy who took Johnny was there, he'd just get arrested. If I went by myself, I knew I could give him what he really deserved. No witnesses, no one to stop me from putting a bullet in his head. Besides, I could have just said it was self-defense. This man put Johnny's parents through hell. I wasn't just about to pass up the opportunity to put him in the ground. I took a picture of the coordinates and plugged them into Google Maps. It was about a 30-minute drive, located deep in woods, outside of town. I threw on my coat, grabbed my gun, and raced out to my car. I'm surprised I didn't get pulled over with how fast I was going. As I sped down the interstate, the leather on my steering wheel creaked beneath my grip. My knuckles turned white, and I caught myself gritting my teeth together. I thought about what that letter said, how he bragged about seeing me in public. How many times had I walked past this guy? How many times have I passed someone on the street corner and that someone was him. I wasn't a cop at this point. I didn't have my badge or my lights on. I was just angry and ready to kill a man. Eventually, I turned onto an old dirt road. I followed the directions until I came upon a trail into the woods. Parking the car, I grabbed the flashlight from my glove box and stepped out. It was twilight, and the forest was quiet, blanketed beneath a thick layer of snow. Not even the birds were making a sound. It was that kind of silence you only find in the dead of winter. As I trudged through the woods, I only became more furious. I imagined what it must have been like when Johnny was brought here. A million questions raced through my mind. Was he unconscious as he was dragged through the snow? Was he even alive? Did he leave a trail of blood, or was he tightly wrapped in a garbage bag? The coordinates took me off the trail and deep into the woods. I didn't even consider if I was going to be able to find my way back. I only had one thing in my mind. Finally, I reached the coordinates, only to find nothing. It was just a small clearing. Snow-covered ground, bare trees, and the dark sky hanging above. I shined my light around, desperately searching for something, anything. I double-checked my phone to make sure I was at the right spot. I was. Stumbling over to a dead log laying up against a small hill, I sat down. I buried my face into my hand and wiped away a few tears as my breath disappeared into the clouds of vapor. The snow came up to my ankles, and the cold seeped through my boots. I slammed my fist down into the decaying wood. I did it again, then again. I shot up to my feet and spun around, screaming into the empty forest as I furiously stomped down the log, the dry wood splintering and cracking beneath my boot as I yelled every profanity I could think of. After what must have been my 10th kick, my foot broke through the hollow log and slammed into something behind it. Something metal. I stumbled back, my foot throbbing in pain. Shining my light through the newly formed hole in the log, I saw a rusted metal surface hiding beneath it. I frantically rolled the log aside, the wood breaking apart as I revealed what was underneath. Brushing the snow aside, I realized that what I was staring at was the entrance to a bunker. My breathing was heavy as I tugged on the latch. To my surprise, it was unlocked. The heavy door groaned as I swung it open. I was greeted with stone steps leading down into the dark. Shining my light, I saw just how deep this bunker was. It must have gone down 10 or 15 feet before the steps finally stopped and gave way to an unlit hallway. Drawing my gun, I took a deep breath and started down the steps. Leaving a trail of snow and mud behind me, I reached the bottom of the stairs and shined my light down the hallway. At the end of the hall was a large metal door. My own breath was deafening as I approached. Against the wall next to the door was a dial. Holding my flashlight in the crook of my neck, I turned it. I flinched as some sort of intercom screeched on, blaring an old and grainy rendition of When Johnny Comes Marching Home. It began with deafening drums and an ear-piercing whistle before giving way to cacophony of voices. Stuffing my gun into my holster, I clasped my hands over my ears as the sound of the entire choir echoed through the bunker. Pushing the metal door open, I stumbled into the room beyond and frantically looked for the source of the music. At the far end of the room was a computer with multiple monitors, one of which was hooked up to a loudspeaker. I grabbed the wire and ripped it out of the speaker, abruptly stopping the music. With the song no longer playing, I looked around to get a feel for my surroundings. I was in a concrete room with low ceilings and flickering fluorescent lights. It was like an old hospital ward. The counters were populated by scalpels, operating tools of various sizes, and syringes. In the center of the room was an operating table adorned with leather straps. The whole room smelled like rubbing alcohol. The lights in the ceiling did a poor job at illuminating things, making the whole bunker feel claustrophobic and suffocating. The walls on the left were like something you would see in a mystery film. Hundreds of pieces of paper pinned to a notice board. Some of them had notes furiously scribbled down in handwriting I could barely decipher. Others, however, looked like printed off images of star systems, a picture of the Milky Way, hung next to an old newspaper clipping from 20 years ago that read, "Strange lights spotted in the night sky." The wall opposite of that was, in fact, not a wall, but rather a glass divider, separating this section from the room from whatever was beyond it. Behind the glass was a thick blue mist, so dense that I couldn't even begin to see what was on the other side. "Johnny! Are you here?" I shouted, running up to the glass and trying to peer through. Stepping back, I looked around the room in search of something to break the glass. That's when I saw it. On one of the computer screens was a recording titled, "For Mathis." Approaching the screen, I moved the mouse over it and clicked play. "Hello, Detective Mathis." My grip on my gun tightened when I finally heard his voice. For 20 years, I had imagined what this monster sounded like. Finally, hearing it felt surreal. The voice was slightly garbled by a modulator, but I could still tell that he was around my age, mid-60s at most. "If you're listening to this, then you read my letter. If you were hoping to arrest me, or maybe even kill me, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I have taken exhaustive steps to cover my tracks. Even if you manage to find my identity, I'll be long gone by then." I clenched my jaw, imagining how satisfying it would feel to choke him out. "I am sure you have many questions, and I think that this recording will answer most of them. But before I can explain anything, I think it's best to introduce you to someone." With that, the chamber behind the glass divider began to hiss. The fog quickly dissipated, and the room beyond was revealed. I don't think I'll ever be able to forget what I saw when the mist fully cleared. I still see it every time I close my eyes. Every time I fall asleep, I see that thing. On the other side of the glass, there was, I don't even know what to call it. It looked vaguely humanoid, but its limbs were more skin to an arachnid. Countless fingers, with numerous joints, sprawled forth from its palms like a spider web. Its skin was brown and covered in a thick layer of slime that dripped down onto the floor. Its emaciated torso was hollow, its ribs curling outward to form a central cavity that bellowed slightly as the thing quietly breathed. "Detective Mathis," the recording said. "Meet the basilisk. Whether that is its true name or simply what it had chosen to be called is beyond me." As my eyes traveled over to the creature's horribly misshapen and grotesque form, I saw something that made my heart sink into my stomach. Encased within its open rib cage was a body. It was small, frail, and wrapped in a cocoon of sinew. It dripped with a strange fluid, and parts of its discolored skin seemed to be merging with the creature itself. Taking a step towards the glass, I let out a quiet gasp when I saw the strands of orange hair hanging from its scalp. "Johnny." To my horror, one of his eyes fluttered open, his irises bloodshot. He looked at me for a split second before his pupil rolled back into his head, and he started to thrash out. He was alive. He was fucking alive. Through the glass, I could hear horrible, excruciating groans. I pray I never have to hear anything like that again. They reverberated off the walls of the bunker. The choked sobs of a child crying not because he is sad or because he needs attention, but because he's in pain. I pressed my hand against the glass and I fought back tears as I watched Johnny, the boy I thought had been dead for 20 years, writhe in agony before my eyes. Suddenly, his screams were overpowered by a large groan. A strange clicking noise filled the room as the many elongated fingers of the basilisk began to twitch. After a few seconds, Johnny's muffled screams were silenced. His eyes fluttered shut, and he went still. As he stopped moving, so did the basilisk. "Johnny! Johnny! Johnny!" I screamed, pounding on the glass. Neither he nor the creature responded. Incredible, isn't it? The basilisk came to me 20 years ago. Its spacecraft descended from the stars before my very eyes. I was barely listening to the recording at this point. My eyes were fixated on Johnny as he laid motionless inside the creature's chest. Do you want to know the interesting part, Detective Mathis? When it came to me, I was a dying man. Brain cancer, stage 4. Inoperable. His voice seemed sullen before perking up as he continued. The basilisk cured me. I should have died years ago, but it halted my tumor in its tracks. I began to look around the room, searching for any way into this chamber, but I found nothing. Johnny was completely sealed off. Can you see it? The fluid it is secreting? In that fluid lies the cure to cancer. Can you imagine a world where we do not have to fear such a horrid fate? The enzymes in that fluid were the key. I knew that if I could isolate them, learn how to replicate it, I could make cancer a thing of the past, and the basilisk was willing to help me. The voice paused for a second, and I could hear the man let out a sigh. Except, it needed something from me. It wanted a child. I've replayed that part in my head more times than I care to admit. It never fails to make me sick. The basilisk is a creature of the abstract. It feeds off features that never were. And there is no one who has more potential or imagination for the future as a child. Johnny is alive in there. The basilisk is keeping him alive, keeping his psyche trapped in the body of a child, dreaming of a future he never had. I know your first instinct will probably be to pull him out, but that won't save him. The basilisk has been feeding off of Johnny for 20 years. They are merged in body and mind. If you separate them, they both die. I started to cry. I stumbled back and leaned against the operating table, unable to peel my eyes away from the glass. The voice sighed deeply. I know you think I'm a monster, Detective Mathis, but I stand by what I've done. Do you know why? He sounded arrogant, so damn smug. Because I figured out how to replicate the enzymes. In a few years, I will have a cure to every type of cancer there is. Do you know how many children die of cancer every year? Nearly 100,000. Nearly 2 million children have died in agony since I first took Johnny. Since I gave him to the basilisk. I had to do this. I have a duty to save as many as I can. And the basilisk never would have helped me if I haven't given it a child. I sacrificed one so I could save millions. No matter how hard I tried, I could not look away from the display on the other side of the glass for more than a few seconds. The otherworldly, incomprehensible, twisted form of the basilisk, Johnny's nearly unrecognizable body, trapped within. If I had gone to the government, the voice began again, they would have locked it beneath the Pentagon. They would have tortured it, and if they ever realized the good it could do, they would have only given it to the rich. The 1% of the 1%. The corrupt, the greedy, and the perverted. I could hear the anger and the bitterness in his voice. I'm going to give this cure to everyone, not just the wealthy. Soon, cancer will be a distant memory. Johnny has made a necessary sacrifice. His suffering has led to an unprecedented leap in medicine. As the recording continued, I approached the glass, looking at the emaciated husk huddled within the chest cavity. His eyes opened again, only for a second. He looked around the room, seeming to follow the web of fingers clinging to the ceiling. In the seconds before he shut his eye again, I could see Johnny's pain, his fear. Now, the way I see it, you have a few options. You could call your precinct, but that would be foolish. If you show them the basilisk, the CIA won't be far behind. If they don't kill you, they will brainwash you into never speaking of this again. They will take both the basilisk and Johnny away for study. He will remain in the living hell, and it will be your fault. I looked down at the gun in my hand, rubbing my thumb over the black metal. Your second option is to kill them, the recording said. Even though I knew they were coming, I felt my heart sink into my stomach as he said those words. I trust you brought your gun. The glass is not bulletproof, and neither is the basilisk. Just a few shots is all it should take. I am no fool. I know that if the basilisk is left unattended, it will eventually leave the bunker and begin searching for other children. Just like any other junkie. The high will wear off, and it will start searching for the next one. I could not bring myself to end its life. I worked with it so many years. It is practically my colleague. For the first time since the recording began, I detected a hint of compassion in his voice. So, it is up to you, Detective Mathis. You can put Johnny out of his misery and walk away. You can be satisfied, knowing that you ended his suffering the only way you could. Alternatively, you could notify the government. You could risk your own life and doom Johnny to who knows how many more years of agony. You are a pragmatic man, much like myself. I trust you will make the correct decision. And with that, the recording was over. I was left in the bunker with nothing but the hum of fluorescent lights and the horrible abomination on the other side of the glass. Looking up from my gun, I saw Johnny staring at me. Not only with one eye, but both. Tears trickled down his cheek as he gazed at me, his eyes pleading for something. I don't know what was going through his mind. I'm not even sure if he was still capable of thought after 20 years of torment. After a few seconds, the basilisk's fingers twitched again, and Johnny was pulled back into his slumber. I looked down at my gun again. My hand was trembling. A few minutes later, I stepped out of the bunker and into the cold night. The chill nipped at my skin, and the barrel of my gun was still smoking. A light snow began to fall as I sat down on a hollow log. I began to sob. I wiped at my eyes, but the tears kept coming. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I cried. As I wept, I felt my gun's weight in my hand, 2 bullets lighter than when I had arrived.